I came home from work just before midnight, and the moment I stepped inside, something felt off. I had this overwhelming feeling that someone was standing right behind me, breathing down my neck. I head to the bathroom to take an after-work shower, like usual. The feeling was so intense that I immediately opened the medicine cabinet, positioning the mirror against the wall as soon as I stepped foot in the bathroom. I felt like I was being watched. I even showered with the curtain pulled back, like I needed to keep an eye on the room. After I had showered, I felt a bit less anxious, but the unease crept back when I walked past my 3-year-old son's room. The door was shut, but I could hear him talking in his sleep. Then I heard a loud crash. I hesitated, slowly opening the door. There he was, sound asleep on top of the covers. I sighed in relief, but I noticed his pile of stuffed animals gathered all over the room, as if something had thrown them around. I turned on the light softly, checked his breathing. Everything seemed fine. So I went to bed and tried to push the uneasiness from my mind. The next morning, I asked my son if he'd had a bad dream last night. He looked at me and said, "Yeah, there was a man with no arms that laughed in my face. I told him to go away, but he wouldn't. Then an arm came out of the wall, threw me up to the ceiling, and I crashed back down onto my bed and went back to sleep." This happened a few years ago. My friend, let's call him Sam, and I used to spend a lot of time together during summer break. We would hang out, grab some snacks from the gas station, then head to my place to play video games. One day, we were hanging out, like usual, but we made one mistake. We forgot to bring money for our snacks. We decided to head home, grab some cash, and meet back at my place since we only lived about 2 blocks away. When I was almost home, I saw Sam running toward me, out of breath, screaming, "Run! Run! He's following me! Run!" and pointing in the direction I was supposed to run. I was completely confused because there was no one behind him. I told him to calm down and asked what was going on. He started explaining that while walking to my house, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned around, he saw a tall, all-black figure standing there. It looked like a man, but his face was completely blank, like it was covered in pure darkness. Sam said they stared at each other for a moment because Sam did not know what to think. Then, out of nowhere, the figure started sprinting toward him at full speed. Sam's instincts kicked in. He bolted in the opposite direction, hearing the footsteps getting closer with every second. Every time he looked back, he saw the figure gaining on him. When he reached my street, he saw me and started screaming. I was still trying to process what he was saying. To this day, he insists on what he saw, and he still has no idea what it was. It's terrifying to think what might have happened if that figure had caught up to him that day. It was just a regular evening, and I was home alone, sitting in my living room. The air was still, and I was focused on my phone, scrolling through social media. As the hours passed, the house began to feel unusually quiet, almost too quiet. I could hear the faint creaks of the house settling, but nothing else. It was then that I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A shadow. It was small at first, barely noticeable, like a flicker, but then it grew larger, stretching along the corner of the room. I turned quickly, my heart racing, expecting to see nothing but an empty room. But there it was, hovering in the corner by the door, just out of my reach. The shape was dark, indistinct, and seemed to shift with every movement. It didn't belong to the furniture or the dim light from the lamp. It was too alive. I blinked, trying to shake the feeling that I was imagining it. But the longer I stared, the more it became clear that something was there, something that didn't want to be seen. I stood up slowly, my pulse quickening. I thought about checking the door, but a feeling of dread washed over me, urging me not to move closer. The shadow seemed to respond to my hesitation, moving ever so slightly, stretching toward me like it was aware of my presence. I could feel it watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. Suddenly, I heard a loud thud from behind me, followed by a strange whisper, soft but clear. "You can't run. I'm already here." I whipped around, heart in my throat, but there was no one there. No noise, nothing out of the ordinary. Just the echo of the whisper in my mind. Shaken, I backed away from the corner, never taking my eyes off it. The shadow remained, frozen in place, still as though it had been there forever. I turned to leave the room, my footsteps quickening as I made my way down the hallway, but I could feel the eyes of the shadow following me, pressing against my back. To this day, I never went back to that corner. It was well past midnight, and we were just hanging out in the living room in our apartment, watching TV and chatting away. Everything felt perfectly normal, nothing out of place. Then, all of a sudden, the doorknob to the front door started shaking violently. It wasn't just a light jiggle. It was being rattled as though someone was trying to force their way inside. We froze. For a moment, we assumed someone might have tried to get into the wrong apartment. I reached for my phone to check the Ring camera, but there was no motion and nothing on the live camera. We stood up and slowly moved towards the sound, but that's when we realized something chilling. Nothing. The front door was still locked. No one was there. No sign of anyone running off. And here's the part that still gives me chills. We were on the second floor. There were no balconies, no fire escape, no possible way for someone to even be near the window by that door. We sat there in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. And to this day, I still don't know what that was.